Joining us right now on this topic, Congressman from the great Republic of Texas, my friend Louie Gohmert. Always so good to see you, Congressman. Glad you're staying well and traveling safely during this pandemic. I have to get your response to this because I saw this just this morning, how they said there's 2,000 now, and ABC's really trumpeting this. Nearly 2,000 Justice Department officials have signed on to a letter calling for Attorney General William Barr to resign over what they describe as his improper intervention in the criminal case of former Trump National Security Advisor Michael Flynn. Well, that seems to kind of beg the question because there was really no case in this. What's your take on this?
Right. Well, what they usually say and what reporters were saying Friday when I was with the president and about 20 other members of Congress at the White House, they lit right into, but he pled guilty. And that's what they're saying. Hey, he admitted guilt in front of a judge. You can't, he's already admitted guilt. But the thing is, as a former felony judge, if I heard that somebody who pled guilty before me had gone out and publicly said, I'm not really guilty, I would require another hearing, and we would have another hearing. And I would bring the defendant in and say, well, you're on television saying, or you were in the media or quoted in newspapers saying you're not guilty, but you pled guilty. I need to know which you are, because if you're not, we're going to go ahead and I'm going to withdraw your plea involuntarily, and we're going to have a trial. And everybody I ever did that with, when we got down to the circumstances, they were embarrassed to their family or the public to know what they did. And they said, I'm really sorry, I really did do this, and they did. But in this case, you have a man who was willing to give his life for his country for what, 33 years? Mm-hmm. And even when he was being extorted and being bankrupted, he still refused to plead guilty because he knew he wasn't. But when they went after his son, then this man who loved his country and loved his family was willing to lay down, take a bullet for his son. And that's what he did. Now, you can go and you can find a lot of POWs that admitted crimes, but we knew they were under extreme duress. And a plea made under extreme duress, and in this case, really extortion, to my knowledge, Dana, we've never gone after a POW because we knew they were under extreme duress, and that we don't prosecute people that admit things under extreme duress or under extortion, and he was under both. Yeah. So, yes, he pled guilty, but these reporters, these Democrats who used to want justice, now they just want to prosecute Republicans. And so they need to back off and remember, if we want real justice in America, we have to go after law enforcement or prosecutors who pursue people and put them under extreme duress so they have to admit guilt when the investigators themselves know he's not guilty. Right. And let me tell you one other thing I hope comes out of this, Dana, is I don't know of another law enforcement entity in the country that does not audio tape or videotape or both people who are making confessions or making statements, because everybody but the FBI, it seems to me, everybody I'm aware of and dealt with and handled pleas and all, they had statements on audio, or usually these days they would have them on video. And the FBI has gotten away for nearly a century with just not audio recording, but doing an interview, after the interview, writing down their version of what somebody said. And in that version, they can make somebody sound guilty who's not, or somebody not guilty that is. And we need to bring the FBI, not just into not even to the 21st century, if they would just come into the 20th century and start videotaping, audio taping statements, then we don't have to go to written statements like in Flynn's case, even got changed, and the original impressions were even destroyed. So I'm hoping, because of what's been exposed here, that there'll be enough people on both sides of the aisle that say, you know what used to be the most respected law enforcement agency in the world now needs to start audio taping, videotaping, if we're going to allow these kind of statements, and just stop allowing 302s into evidence. Nobody else normally gets things like that into evidence.
And we already know that it's up to an agent's, well, it seems to be up to the agent's discretion as to when they want to, in effect, pursue that. Because from what I understand, Strzok, when he was questioning Cheryl Mills and Huma Abedin, they both lied to him, but nothing actionable was that he never took any action at all in either of those interviews, even though they had lied. And on this, it was seemingly they were trying to get him on a recollection. And you brought up a point, too, that critics keep saying, well, Flynn admitted that to guilt. He said that he did something in this perjury trap, as our friend Andy McCarthy has written. Right. But how can they focus on that while discounting how not just Peter Strzok, but also James Comey had testified, yes, we did not find any criminality. Peter Strzok had said the same thing, and it seemingly only happened after Comey was fired that there was this thirst for a reckoning, and then that's when the talking points on this changed. I mean, they already exonerated him. I mean, ultimately, why doesn't that matter?
It should matter, and the fact that they originally exonerated him, there were no further statements, and then the only change was who was pushing the case, and didn't care what the original impression was. That should matter. It ought to make a great deal of difference. And keep in mind, when you're talking about Peter Strzok, you're not only talking about a serial liar, but you're talking about a serial liar with a smirk on his face.
Yes, he looks like, as I've said, the elf on the shelf outside of the elf costume. That's what he looks like. How much about this did former President Obama know? Because a lot of information out this weekend suggests that he knew absolutely every single thing, and maybe even had given suggestions on what to do next. What is your thought?
Well, these things are being confirmed now, but Dana, I know you, and I know the way you and I thought about this originally. When Strzok's and Page's text messages came out, and we see the message, POTUS wants to know everything we're doing. You knew, they knew, but we needed more evidence than that. And now we're getting to it, and now we're seeing it. There's no way one administration would have people going after a new administration unless the top person knew and said, okay, just keep me out of it, but go ahead.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense at all, and that makes me think that that's why the former president came out so hard and was criticizing Trump over the weekend, because all of this information was coming out at the same time, and now he needed to perhaps seize the media spotlight and redirect attention, because this is very damning, this information coming out about Obama's involvement.
Yeah, absolutely, and actually, you start talking about conspiracy, criminal conspiracy here. There are criminal conspiracies that go on all the time. And what keeps them from actually being a crime is you have to not only have a discussion about it, but you have to have an overt act in furtherance of the conspiracy. And when you have conspiratorial talking, and then the FBI actually goes out and does actions with people's blessing, you have not only the conspiratorial talking, but you actually have the overt act that makes it a crime.
And there could very likely be something like that in this particular instance. While we have a few minutes left, I want to switch gears really quickly, as we've all been focusing on this, the reopening of America, and it now, as we see the numbers and we keep hearing stories, actually not stories, I mean, we keep seeing these, legitimate reports of all of these temporary hospitals that had opened that didn't see any patients, they're closing, while we also see hospitals lay off staff and needed medical professionals because no one's going in to get anything elective. They're not even getting in, cancer screenings or, joint surgeries or anything like this. It seems as though, looking at the numbers, that our response was tailored to the original numbers and the original 100 to 200,000 fatalities. We are not seeing that. We're not seeing that, and then with also the way that deaths are being reported, even if an individual had comorbidities, that ultimately was the thing that was fueling the health situation. Even if they had contracted coronavirus, it's listed as a coronavirus death. Even keeping all of that in mind, we are having a shutdown and a response that is not justified by the numbers. How are we reopening at a pace that is too slow in your estimation? Or should we, I feel like the president is fighting with not just, some of the advisors and some other people. I feel like he wants to do more. What is your response on this and your thoughts as to the reopening, as a lot of business owners are struggling?
We've got to start reopening those that have been closed. People can socially distance, but for most of America's history, we had something called assumption of the risk as a defense when somebody takes action is harmed. And, you've got salon workers, beauticians, barbers, people all over the country that are saying, I would rather wear a mask and gloves, take the risk, continue or get back to work instead of you driving me bankrupt, because, a lot of these people were not in position to apply for a paycheck protection plan loan. And once they are defaulting, they're not likely to get another loan. They're not likely to be able to be an entrepreneur again. It may sentence them to being, subjects or indentured servants for the rest of their lives. And so it's tragic. And, the news today out, of course, is Georgia. And the president's advisors were telling him, oh, no, Georgia's going way too fast. And then Georgia announced today that their numbers are down from where they were before they started reopening. But humans are social animals. And I know you see everything and but the fact that Australia they're being projected to have 10 times the number of suicides, that they have people die from the coronavirus. That's just scary when it promotes any suicides. And I was on a conference call here in Texas, and a doctor who was had one of the hospitals on the call was really upset because the Texas Medical Board had said if any doctor does any procedures that are not essential, basically life-saving, they will lose their license and subject to losing their license and going to jail. And so on the call, the doctors were assured, oh no, the Texas Medical Board, they're leaving all of these things up to the doctors, individual opinions. But as one doctor has said, look, all it takes is one patient that's mad to file a grievance, and then we spend hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees trying to keep our license instead of treating patients. And so that kind of thing has a real chilling effect. And I would say, I've read our orders, governors and local orders from judges, county judges and mayors. And usually they have that provision in their order that says under such and such provision of the government code or health and safety code, a violation is punishable by a $1,000 fine and up to 180 days in jail. And I wish Republican leaders would take those things out of their orders, because they end up saying, oh, I didn't mean for anybody to go to jail. Well, you put it in your order, then you shouldn't have done that. And that bothered me when I saw those initially. So hopefully Republicans and then some Democrats that care deeply will start removing that, because they'll come to realize the kind of damage we're doing. But one doctor said, look, I had a guy come in that was in horrible pain, and he said, you've got to do something. He said, I'm prohibited because it's not life-threatening. And he said the guy went out and killed himself.
Oh my
So
gosh.
they've got to get back to allowing doctors, healthcare providers to do their jobs on other things besides coronavirus. And doctors are projecting, all the people that would have come in and found, had mammograms, found lumps, they're being delayed. And we don't know right now
There's a
just
consequence to
how
that.
life-threatening it will be when
Exactly.
they finally come in and get their delayed
Terrifying.
diagnostic care.
It's going to be a lot higher cost than people are realizing. Congressman Louie Gohmert,
Yep.
so appreciate your voice, and I love the point you made, too, about those orders state by state. That's a really good point. I really appreciate your voice out there, appreciate all you do, and especially shining a light on this Flynn case, because if it can happen to somebody like the president or somebody like a hero like Michael Flynn, golly, what chance do the rest of us have? Congressman, appreciate you. Thank you.